They say marriage is about compromise. What they don't tell you is that sometimes one person does all the compromising while the other does all the taking. I'm Simon Hall, 42 years old, and I just discovered that my wife of 18 years has been playing me like a cheap violin. It started 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays are trash day, and I was hauling our bins to the curb when I saw Marta's phone light up on the kitchen counter. The message preview made my blood freeze. Last night was incredible, babe. Can't wait for round 2 at your place. The sender? Trent Voss, her subordinate at T-Bold Advertising. The same guy she'd been mentioning casually for months. Oh, Trent had this great idea for the campaign. Trent really gets the vision. Trent's working late with me again tonight. I stood there holding a bag of garbage, realizing I'd been living with a much bigger piece of trash for months. My name is Simon Hall, and I'm about to tell you how I burned down my entire life to rebuild it better. This isn't a story about forgiveness or working things out. This is about what happens when a nice guy decides he's tired of finishing last. Marta was in the shower, humming some pop song she'd been obsessed with lately. Probably something Trent introduced her to. I picked up her phone, my hands shaking slightly. The lock screen showed 3 more messages from him, each one more explicit than the last. Your husband's out of town next week, right? I've got something special planned for you. Hope you're ready for what I'm going to do to you. The phone slipped from my hands and clattered on the marble countertop. 18 years. 18 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, shared dreams, and inside jokes. All of it reduced to intimate texts with some muscle-bound moron who probably couldn't spell advertising without autocorrect. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. Marta would be down in 15 minutes, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, ready to kiss me goodbye and tell me she loved me before heading off to work, where she'd spend the day planning her next rendezvous with Trent. The old Simon would have confronted her right then, would have demanded explanations, begged for counseling, probably cried. The old Simon was an idiot. The new Simon was going to be much more interesting. I put her phone back exactly where I found it and went to make coffee. When Marta came downstairs 20 minutes later, she looked radiant, glowing even. Now I knew why. "Morning, honey," she said, kissing my cheek. Her lips felt like ice against my skin. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I replied, which was true. I'd been awake since 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering how long this had been going on. Big day at the office? She poured herself coffee, adding that expensive vanilla creamer she'd started buying recently. Another gift from Trent, probably. "Oh, you know how it is. The Morrison account is heating up. Trent and I might have to work late again tonight." There it was. The lie, delivered with a smile and a casual shrug. She was good at this. Too good. This wasn't her first affair. "That's fine," I said, matching her casual tone. "Adam has lacrosse practice anyway. I'll probably grab dinner with Eddie." Eddie Martinez was my oldest friend, a contractor who'd known me since high school. If anyone would understand what I was going through, it would be him. Marta grabbed her purse and keys, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror one last time. "Love you," she called out, already halfway out the door. "Love you too," I replied to the empty hallway. But I was lying now too. The house felt different after she left. Quieter, like it was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. I walked through the rooms we'd decorated together, past the photos of family vacations and milestone celebrations. Everything looked the same, but it all felt like props in an elaborate stage production. Our bedroom was the worst. The bed we'd shared for nearly 2 decades now felt contaminated. How many times had she lain next to me, planning her next meeting with him? How many times had she come home from being with him and slipped into bed beside me? I opened her nightstand drawer, not sure what I was looking for. Underneath her reading glasses and hand cream, I found a receipt from Victoria's Secret, dated 2 weeks ago, $68 for lingerie I'd never seen. That's when I started laughing. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming until my throat bled. Here I was, discovering my wife's affair through a receipt for attractive underwear she'd bought for another man. It was so cliché it could have been a subplot in a bad sitcom. My phone buzzed. A text from Adam. Mom said she's working late again. Can you pick me up from practice? Our son, 17 years old, captain of his lacrosse team, honor roll student. What was this going to do to him? To our daughter Lily, away at college? They adored their mother. She was the fun parent, the one who remembered birthdays and planned elaborate celebrations. I was just the guy who paid the bills and fixed things when they broke. Well, something was definitely broken now, and for the first time in my marriage I wasn't going to fix it. I was going to let it shatter completely. I spent the morning researching divorce attorneys and private investigators. Not because I was ready to file papers, but because I needed to understand my options. What I learned wasn't encouraging. Wisconsin was a no-fault divorce state, which meant Marta's affair wouldn't impact the financial settlement. We'd split everything 50-50, regardless of who had betrayed whom. But money wasn't what I wanted. I wanted justice. I wanted consequences. I wanted her to feel even a fraction of the humiliation and betrayal she'd put me through. By the time I picked up Adam from practice, I had the beginnings of a plan. Adam climbed into the passenger seat, his lacrosse gear filling the car with the smell of teenage sweat and determination. He was quiet during the drive home, which wasn't unusual. 17-year-old boys aren't known for their conversational skills. But as we pulled into our driveway, he finally spoke up. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Sure, buddy." "What's on your mind?" He fidgeted with his equipment bag. "Is everything okay with you and Mom?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Why do you ask?" "I don't know. You guys seem different lately, and she's been working a lot more. Plus, there was this weird thing at Jake's party last weekend. Jake Henderson was Adam's teammate, and his parents often hosted team gatherings." "What kind of weird thing?" Adam's face reddened. "Mom was there, right? For the parent mixer thing. But she brought this guy from her work, Trent something, and they were... I don't know, Dad. It was embarrassing." My stomach dropped. Embarrassing how? They were laughing together, standing really close. And when I came over to say hi, the guy made some joke about me being a mama's boy because I wanted to talk to her. Mom thought it was hilarious. I turned off the engine and faced my son. His face was flushed with anger and humiliation. What else happened? The guy kept making these comments about me all night. About how I needed to man up and stop being so soft. And Mom she agreed with him, Dad. She said maybe he was right, that you and I were too close and it was making me weak. The rage that hit me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't the cold anger of discovering the affair. This was hot, immediate, protective fury. She'd humiliated our son to impress her boyfriend. She'd let some stranger mock the child we'd raised together. "I'm sorry that happened, Adam." That was completely inappropriate. He shrugged, trying to play it off, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. "Whatever, I don't like that guy. There's something wrong with him." "What do you mean?" He kept staring at the younger moms making gross comments. And he was drinking a lot. Jake's mom looked really uncomfortable. Perfect. So Trent wasn't just a homewrecker. He was a creep who made inappropriate comments about married women at high school events. This was getting better by the minute. That evening, Marta came home at nearly 10 o'clock, claiming she'd grabbed dinner with the team after their late meeting. She was wearing the new perfume again, the one that smelled nothing like the vanilla and jasmine scent she'd worn for years. "How was practice?" she asked Adam, barely looking up from her phone. "Fine," he replied shortly. She didn't notice his tone, too busy typing what was probably another message to her lover. I watched her fingers fly across the screen, wondering what sweet nothings she was sharing with him. "I'm going to bed. Adam announced, heading upstairs. Marta finally looked up. He's been moody lately. He's 17, I said. Plus, he had a rough time at Jake's party last weekend. Her fingers paused over her phone screen. Oh? What happened? I studied her face carefully. He said you brought someone from work. Made him uncomfortable. She laughed, but it sounded forced. Trent was just teasing him. Boys need to learn to take a joke. Our son felt humiliated in front of his teammates. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, she said, her voice taking on an edge. You baby him too much, Simon. He needs to toughen up. There it was. The real Marta, the one who'd been hiding behind the loving wife mask for months, maybe years. Since when do you think our son needs toughening up? She set down her phone and looked at me with barely concealed irritation. Since I realized that coddling him isn't doing him any favors. The real world doesn't care about his feelings. And Trent taught you this valuable parenting lesson? Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I could have confronted her right then, could have laid out everything I knew and demanded the truth. Instead, I smiled and shrugged. Nothing. Just wondering where this new philosophy came from. She studied my face for a moment, then picked up her phone again. I'm going to take a bath and go to bed. It's been a long day. After she went upstairs, I sat in our living room and planned my next move. Marta thought she was so clever, conducting her affair right under my nose. But she'd made a crucial mistake by involving our son. By letting her boyfriend humiliate Adam, she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I opened my laptop and started researching Trent Voss. Social media made it embarrassingly easy. His Instagram was public, filled with gym selfies and inspirational quotes about crushing your goals and taking what you want. His LinkedIn showed he'd been at T-Bold for 8 months, hired as a junior creative after being let go from his previous agency in Chicago. Interesting. I dug deeper and found a local Chicago forum where former employees of his old agency discussed workplace drama. Trent's name came up several times, always in connection with inappropriate behavior toward female colleagues. Nothing criminal, but enough to paint a picture of a man who didn't understand boundaries. My phone buzzed with a text from Eddie. Beer tomorrow? You sounded weird on the phone earlier. I'd called him that afternoon but hadn't been ready to explain everything yet. Now I was. Definitely. I have a story that's going to blow your mind. The next evening, I met Eddie at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar we'd been frequenting since our 20s. Eddie was already nursing a beer when I arrived, his weathered hands wrapped around the bottle. 20 years of construction work had left him looking older than his age, but his eyes were sharp and kind. You look like hell, he said by way of greeting. Thanks. I feel worse than I look. I ordered a whiskey and told him everything. The texts, the receipts, the humiliation of our son. Eddie listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But I'm not going to just roll over and take it. Eddie nodded slowly. Good, because the Simon I know wouldn't let anyone treat his family like that. The Simon you know is an idiot who didn't see this coming. The Simon I know is a good man who trusted his wife. That's not stupidity, that's love. But love has limits. He was right. I'd loved Marta completely, faithfully, for 18 years. I'd supported her career, raised our children, built a life around making her happy. And she'd repaid that love by sleeping with a man who mocked our son. I want them to pay, I said quietly. Eddie raised his beer. Then let's figure out how to make that happen. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Eddie had connections throughout the city from his construction work. He knew people who knew people, and information was just another form of currency in his world. First thing we need is evidence, he said. Real evidence, not just suspicious text messages, photos, documents, something concrete. How do I get that without breaking any laws? Eddie grinned. Leave that to me. I know a guy who specializes in matrimonial investigations. Completely legal, completely thorough. By the time I got home, Marta was already asleep, or pretending to be. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom watching her breathe in the darkness. She looked peaceful, innocent even, but I knew better now. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The private investigator Eddie recommended was named Frank Morrison, a former police detective who'd gone into business for himself after retirement. His office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service, which seemed appropriately unglamorous for the kind of work he did. Frank was in his 60s, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much human weakness. He listened to my story without judgment, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. How long do you think this has been going on? He asked. I'm not sure. Maybe 3 months? Could be longer. He nodded. And you want photographic evidence of the affair? I want everything. Photos, financial records, communication logs. I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Frank quoted me a price that made me wince, but I agreed immediately. This was an investment in my future, and my children's future. Whatever it cost would be worth it. One more thing, I said as I prepared to leave. The guy she's seeing, Trent Voss, made inappropriate comments about other women at a high school event. If there's a pattern of behavior there, I want to know about it. Frank made another note. I'll look into his background. Sometimes these guys have histories. Over the next week, I maintained the perfect facade of the oblivious husband. I kissed Marta goodbye each morning, asked about her day each evening, and made love to her twice when she initiated it. Each time felt like a betrayal of myself, but I needed her to believe everything was normal. Meanwhile, Frank was busy documenting her betrayal. He followed her to lunch meetings that weren't with clients, to hotel visits that weren't for business, to Trent's apartment complex where she stayed for hours at a time. The photos he showed me were devastating in their clarity. Marta and Trent kissing in the parking lot of the Marriott downtown. Marta leaving his apartment building at midnight, her hair disheveled and her clothes wrinkled. Trent's hand on her ass as they walked into a restaurant together. But it was the financial investigation that really opened my eyes. Marta had been slowly draining our joint savings account, transferring small amounts to a personal account I didn't know existed. Over the past 4 months, she'd moved nearly $15,000. She's planning something, Frank explained. This kind of financial maneuvering usually means someone's preparing for a divorce. She's probably been meeting with lawyers. The betrayal was even deeper than I'd imagined. Not only was she cheating on me, she was actively planning to leave me while pretending everything was fine. How long had she been living this double life? That evening, I confronted her about the money. Marta, I was looking at our bank statements, and I noticed some transfers I don't remember making. She was folding laundry, her movements sharp and efficient. What transfers? About $15,000 moved to an account I'm not familiar with. Her hands stilled for just a moment before continuing with the towels. Oh, that. I opened a separate account for household expenses. It's easier to track that way. $15,000 in household expenses? We have a lot of expenses, Simon. The kids, the house, my work clothes. It adds up. It was a terrible lie, delivered without conviction. The old Simon would have accepted it, maybe even apologized for questioning her. The new Simon just nodded and smiled. That makes sense. I just wish you'd mentioned it. I'm mentioning it now. The next morning, I called our bank and froze the joint accounts. It was a nuclear option, but I was tired of being the only one playing by the rules. When Marta tried to make a transfer later that day, she'd find herself locked out. My phone rang at 2:30 that afternoon. Marta's name flashed on the screen. Simon, what did you do to our accounts? What do you mean? I can't access our savings. The bank says there's a hold on all transfers. That's strange. Maybe it's a security issue? Identity theft is so common these days. There was a long pause. Fix it. I'll call them right away, I lied. That evening, she was furious. She'd spent the day trying to resolve the banking error and getting nowhere. I watched her pace around the kitchen, her phone pressed to her ear as she argued with customer service representatives who couldn't help her because I'd requested the hold. This is ridiculous, she snapped after hanging up on the third representative. They're saying it could take weeks to resolve. I'm sure it won't take that long, I said mildly. These things usually work themselves out. She stared at me suspiciously. You seem awfully calm about this. Getting upset won't fix it any faster. Later that night, I heard her on the phone in our bedroom, speaking in low, urgent tones. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. She was panicking. Good. It was about time she felt a fraction of the stress she'd been putting me through. The next day brought an unexpected development. Adam came home from school with a black eye and split lip. What happened? I demanded, examining his injuries. It's nothing, Dad. Just a stupid fight. With who? He hesitated, then sighed. Jake Henderson. Jake was his teammate and one of his closest friends. Why were you fighting Jake? Because he said something about Mom. My blood ran cold. What kind of something? Adam's face reddened. His older brother saw her with that Trent guy at some restaurant downtown. Jake said they were all over each other. So I told him he was lying, and he showed me pictures on his brother's phone. The humiliation was spreading. Marta's affair was becoming public knowledge, and our son was paying the price. He was getting into fights defending a mother who didn't deserve his loyalty. I'm sorry, Adam. You shouldn't have had to deal with that. Is it true, Dad? His voice was small, vulnerable. Is Mom cheating on you? I looked at my 17-year-old son, his face bruised from defending his mother's honor, and made a decision that would change everything. Yes, I said quietly. It's true. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. What are we going to do about it? The question hung in the air between us. What were we going to do about it? We're going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person she really is, I said. Adam smiled for the first time in weeks. Good. The plan came together over the next few days. Adam, despite his youth, had inherited his father's strategic mind and his mother's ruthless streak. Together, we crafted something beautiful and terrible. The Henderson family was hosting their annual end-of-season lacrosse party that Saturday. The entire team would be there, along with parents, siblings, and extended family. It was the social event of the spring season, and Marta had been looking forward to it for weeks. She'd also invited Trent as her +1, claiming he was interested in supporting the team. The truth was, she wanted to show him off, to parade her young lover in front of the other parents like a trophy. Frank had provided me with a comprehensive dossier on Trent's background. The man was even worse than I'd imagined. He'd been fired from his previous job for harassment, had a restraining order filed against him by an ex-girlfriend in Chicago, and was currently 3 months behind on his rent. But the most interesting discovery was his financial situation. Trent was broke. His credit cards were maxed out, his student loans were in default, and he'd been evicted from 2 apartments in the past year. His relationship with Marta wasn't just about intimacy. It was about money. Armed with this knowledge, I prepared for war. The party was in full swing when we arrived. The Hendersons' backyard was decorated with team colors, and a banner congratulated the boys on their successful season. Parents mingled with drinks in hand while the players gathered around a fire pit, reliving their favorite moments from the year. Marta looked stunning in a new dress I'd never seen before. Another gift from Trent, probably, paid for with money she'd stolen from our joint account. She worked the crowd like a politician, charming parents and teachers with her bright smile and infectious laugh. Trent arrived 20 minutes later, and I got my first good look at him in person. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, muscular, with the kind of artificial confidence that came from too many hours at the gym and not enough time developing actual personality. He wore an expensive suit that I was probably paying for indirectly. I watched him interact with the other parents, noting how he positioned himself just a little too close to the women and dominated conversations with the men. Several people looked uncomfortable, but Marta beamed with pride, hanging on his arm like he was some kind of celebrity. "Dad?" Adam appeared at my elbow. "You ready for this? Are you sure you want to be involved?" This is going to get ugly. He touched his healing black eye. "I'm sure." The first phase of our plan was simple: social isolation. Adam worked his way through the crowd of teenagers, sharing carefully selected pieces of information about Trent. How he'd made inappropriate comments about their mothers. How he'd mocked Adam and encouraged Marta to be harder on her son. How he'd been bragging at work about landing a rich suburban wife. Meanwhile, I approached Jake Henderson's older brother, Marcus, who was home from college for the weekend. "Marcus, I understand you saw my wife with another man recently." He looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Hall, I didn't mean for Jake to say anything. It's not really my business. Actually, it is your business. And everyone else's business, too. Because that man is here tonight, and people should know what kind of person he is." I showed him the photos Frank had taken, along with selected portions of Trent's background check. Marcus's eyes widened as he scrolled through the evidence. "Holy shit," he whispered. "Does everyone know about this?" They're about to. The beauty of teenage social networks is their speed and efficiency. Within 30 minutes, every young person at the party knew about Trent's history and Marta's affair. The parents took a little longer, but whispered conversations and meaningful glances began spreading the information through their ranks as well. I watched Marta's face as she began to notice the change in atmosphere. Conversations stopped when she approached. People who had been warm and friendly suddenly seemed distant. She kept looking around confused, sensing something was wrong but unable to identify the source. Trent, oblivious to the social currents around him, continued holding court near the bar. He was telling a loud story about his college football days, embellishing details that probably weren't true to begin with. A small group of fathers listened politely, but I could see the disgust in their eyes. That's when I made my move. "Trent," I said, approaching the group with a friendly smile, "I don't think we've been properly introduced. I'm Simon Hall, Marta's husband." The conversation died instantly. Trent's face went pale, but he recovered quickly, extending his hand with false confidence. "Nice to meet you, Simon. Marta's told me so much about you." I shook his hand, gripping it just a little too tightly. "Funny, she's told me quite a bit about you, too, though I suspect we've heard different versions of the same story." The other fathers began to back away, sensing confrontation. But I wasn't done yet. "Tell me, Trent, what exactly is your interest in high school lacrosse? Do you have a son on the team?" "No, I like supporting local athletics. That's admirable. Though I have to say, some of your comments about the players have been concerning, particularly your thoughts on my son's character." Trent glanced around nervously. "I think there might be some misunderstanding." "Oh, I don't think there's any misunderstanding at all. In fact, I think everything is crystal clear." That's when Marta appeared, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. She'd finally figured out what was happening. "Simon, what are you doing? I'm getting to know your friend better." We were just discussing his background. "Did you know he was fired from his last job for intimate harassment?" The remaining bystanders gasped. Marta's face went white. "That's not true," Trent said quickly. "There was a misunderstanding with a coworker, but it was resolved." "A misunderstanding that resulted in a restraining order?" "Simon, stop," Marta hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Am I?" "Because I think the only people who should be embarrassed are the ones who've been lying and cheating and stealing." The word stealing hit home. Marta flinched like I'd slapped her. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the $15,000 you've been funneling into secret accounts." I'm talking about the hotel receipts and the lingerie purchases and the late-night visits to his apartment. By now, we had an audience. The entire party had gone quiet, everyone straining to hear the drama unfolding near the bar. Trent tried to salvage the situation. "Look, man, I think you've got the wrong idea about—" "The wrong idea?" I laughed, pulling out my phone. "Let me show everyone the right idea." The photos Frank had taken were damning in their clarity. Marta and Trent kissing passionately in a hotel parking lot. Trent's hand up her skirt as they stood against his car. Marta leaving his apartment building at midnight, her hair disheveled and her makeup smeared. I held up the phone so everyone could see. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Simon, please," Marta begged, tears streaming down her face. "Don't do this here." "Why not here? This is where your boyfriend humiliated our son. This is where you laughed while he mocked Adam for being too close to his father. This seems like the perfect place." Trent finally found his voice. "You're crazy, man. This is harassment." "Harassment?" I stepped closer to him, close enough to smell his expensive cologne. "You want to know what harassment looks like?" It looks like a grown man mocking a teenager to impress his married girlfriend. It looks like making inappropriate comments about other men's wives. It looks like targeting vulnerable women for financial gain. "That's enough!" Trent shoved me hard. I'd been hoping he would do something like that. I stumbled backward, making sure everyone saw the unprovoked aggression. Several of the other fathers immediately stepped forward, surrounding Trent. "You need to leave," said Bob Henderson, the host. "Right now." "This is bullshit," Trent snarled. "You're all buying into this psycho's lies." "Are these lies?" I held up the phone again, scrolling through more photos. "Is this lie?" I showed the financial records documenting Marta's secret transfers. Trent looked around desperately, realizing he'd lost the crowd completely. "Marta, tell them this isn't what it looks like." But Marta was staring at the ground, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Her social reputation, carefully built over years of PTA meetings and charity events, was crumbling in real time. "Get out," Bob Henderson repeated. "Both of you. You're not welcome here." As Trent stormed toward the parking lot, I called after him. "Oh, and Trent? You might want to find a new job. I'm sure T-Bold Advertising will be very interested in your employment history once I share it with them." He stopped walking, his shoulders rigid with fury, but he didn't turn around. He knew I had him beaten. Marta followed him, pausing only to look back at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "This isn't over, Simon." "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." The party resumed eventually, but the atmosphere had changed. Parents approached me throughout the evening, some offering support, others sharing their own stories of betrayal and revenge. Adam stood taller than he had in months, his teammates treating him with new respect. As I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete satisfaction. Marta and Trent had been exposed, humiliated, and socially destroyed, but I wasn't finished with them yet. The real revenge was just beginning. Marta didn't come home that night, or the next night. On Monday morning, I received a text. "Staying at my father's. We need to talk." Her father, Carl Brennan, was a retired military officer who had never liked me. He thought Marta had married beneath her station, that she deserved someone with more ambition and earning potential. I'm sure he was thrilled to have his suspicions about my inadequacy confirmed. But Carl didn't know what I knew about his precious daughter, and he certainly didn't know what was coming next. I'd spent Sunday putting the finishing touches on my masterpiece. Frank had delivered the complete investigation file, and it was even more damaging than I'd hoped. Trent's background check revealed a pattern of targeting older, financially stable women. Marta was his third married victim in 5 years. More importantly, I'd discovered that Marta's affair wasn't her first. Frank had uncovered evidence of at least 2 previous relationships, both with younger men from her workplace. She'd been living a double life for years, and I'd been too trusting to see it. The financial investigation was equally revealing. In addition to the money she'd stolen from our joint accounts, Marta had been using our credit cards to fund her affairs. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts for her lovers, all charged to accounts I was responsible for paying. But the most damaging discovery was her communication with a divorce attorney. Frank had obtained copies of emails showing that Marta had been planning to leave me for months. She'd been calculating asset division, researching alimony requirements, and strategizing how to maximize her financial settlement. The emails revealed her true feelings about our marriage and family. She described me as weak and boring, called our life together suffocating, and expressed excitement about finally living authentically. Most painful was her assessment of our children. Adam was too sensitive and clingy, while Lily was judgmental and self-righteous. She saw them as obstacles to her new life, not people she loved. Armed with this ammunition, I prepared for the final battle. Tuesday morning, I called T-Bold Advertising and asked to speak with the Human Resources Director. I'd met Janet Walsh at several company functions over the years, and she'd always struck me as a no-nonsense professional who took workplace conduct seriously. "Simon, what can I do for you?" she asked when I was transferred to her office. "I have some information about one of your employees that I think you need to see. It concerns intimate harassment and inappropriate workplace relationships." There was a pause. "Are you talking about Marta?" "Actually, I'm talking about Trent Voss. But yes, Marta is involved." I emailed her the complete file on Trent's background, including the harassment complaints from his previous job, the restraining order, and documented evidence of his relationship with Marta. I also included photos showing them together during work hours, using company time and resources for personal activities. Janet called me back within an hour. "Simon, this is extensive. We'll need to conduct a full investigation." "Of course. I just thought you should know what kind of people you're employing." By Wednesday afternoon, both Marta and Trent had been suspended pending investigation. By Friday, they were both fired. T-Bold had a strict policy against workplace relationships between supervisors and subordinates, and the evidence of Trent's harassment history made him a liability they couldn't afford. But I wasn't done. Over the weekend, I created anonymous social media accounts and began sharing selected portions of the investigation with Marta's friends, colleagues, and extended family. Not everything. I wasn't trying to destroy her completely, just ensure that everyone knew who she really was. The response was swift and brutal. Her book club expelled her. The charity board she'd served on for 5 years asked for her resignation. Parents from Adam's school began unfriending her on Facebook and excluding her from group chats. Most satisfying was the reaction from her family. Her sister called me Sunday evening, crying and apologizing for Marta's behavior. Her mother sent a card expressing shame and disappointment. Even her cousins reached out to offer support. Carl, however, remained loyal to his daughter. Monday morning, he showed up at my office. I work as a project manager for a mid-sized engineering firm. Nothing glamorous but stable and well-paying. Carl marched into the lobby like he was storming an enemy position, demanding to see me immediately. "You son of a bitch," he said when I met him in the conference room. "What you did to my daughter is unforgivable." Carl was 72 years old but still imposing, with silver hair and the rigid posture of a career military man. He'd always intimidated me before, but not anymore. "What I did? Carl, your daughter has been cheating on me for months, stealing money from our joint accounts, and planning to divorce me while pretending everything was fine." "What exactly did I do wrong?" "You humiliated her in public. You destroyed her career. You turned her own family against her." I told the truth. If that destroyed her life, maybe she should have made better choices. He leaned forward, his face red with anger. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won something here? I think I've exposed a liar and a cheat for what she really is. Marta made a mistake, but she's still the mother of your children. Did you think about them when you were planning your little revenge scheme?" That hit home. but I didn't let it show. Did she think about them when she was sleeping with a man who mocked our son? Did she think about them when she was planning to abandon our family for a younger man? Carl had no answer for that. He stood up, straightening his jacket with military precision. This isn't over, Simon. Marta deserves better than you, and she's going to get it. She had better than me, I replied. She threw it away for an unemployed loser with a history of harassment. That's on her, not me. After he left, I sat in the empty conference room and wondered if he was right. Had I gone too far? Had my need for revenge overshadowed my responsibility to my children? The answer came that evening when Adam got home from school. He was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in months. Dad, you're not going to believe what happened today. What's that? Jake Henderson apologized for fighting with me. He said his parents explained what was really going on, and he felt bad for not believing me. And get this, half the team wants to hang out this weekend. They think what you did was awesome. They do? Are you kidding? You're like a legend now. Mr. Peterson said you handled a difficult situation with strategic precision. That's a direct quote. Mr. Peterson was the lacrosse coach, a former Marine who didn't give compliments lightly. What about your mother? I asked carefully. Adam's expression sobered. What about her? She chose that loser over us, Dad. She made her choice, and you made yours. I know which one I respect more. That night, I called Lily at college to explain what had happened. I'd been dreading the conversation, knowing how close she was to her mother. Dad, she said after I'd finished the story. I'm so sorry. I can't believe Mom did this to you. To us. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Are you kidding? I'm glad you fought back. I'm proud of you. You are? Dad, you've spent my entire life being the nice guy, letting people walk all over you, always trying to keep the peace. It's about time you showed some backbone. Her words meant more to me than any victory over Marta or Trent. My children understood what I'd done and why I'd done it. They supported me. The next morning, I received a call from Marta's divorce attorney. She wanted to negotiate a settlement. Mr. Hall, my client is prepared to make a very reasonable offer. I'm sure she is. But I'm not interested in negotiating with someone who's been planning to divorce me for months while stealing money from our joint accounts. The financial irregularities can be explained, can they? Because I have emails where she discusses hiding assets and maximizing her settlement. I have credit card records showing she used marital funds to pay for hotel rooms with her lover. I have documentation of systematic theft over a period of months. There was a long pause. What do you want, Mr. Hall? I want her to have exactly what she's entitled to under Wisconsin law. 50% of our legitimate marital assets, minus the money she stole, minus the fraudulent credit card charges, minus her legal fees. That would leave her with very little. That's what happens when you steal from your spouse and commit adultery with a subordinate employee. Adultery isn't grounds for, but theft is, and fraud is, and I have evidence of both. The attorney hung up. An hour later, Marta called me directly. Simon, please, we can work this out. Can we? Because according to your emails, I'm weak and boring, our marriage is suffocating, and you can't wait to live authentically without me. She was crying. I never meant those things. I was angry, confused. You meant every word, and now you're facing the consequences. What do you want from me? I thought about that question for a long moment. What did I want? Revenge? I'd already gotten that. Money? I'd never cared much about money. Reconciliation? That was impossible after everything that had happened. I want you to disappear, I said finally. I want you to take whatever settlement my lawyer offers, sign the papers, and start your new authentic life somewhere else. I want you to leave me and our children alone. I can't do that. They're my children too. Are they? Because your emails suggest you see them as obstacles to your happiness. She was sobbing now. I made mistakes, Simon. Terrible mistakes. But I love my children. Then prove it. Let them heal from what you've done. Don't drag them through a bitter custody battle. Don't force them to choose between parents. And if I agree to this, then I won't share the rest of your emails with your family. I won't tell your mother about your previous affairs. I won't show your sister the things you wrote about her children. It was a cruel ultimatum, but I was past caring about cruelty. Marta had destroyed our family for her own selfish desires. Now she could live with the consequences. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. She called back 18 hours later. I accept your terms. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized. Marta received a settlement that left her financially stable but not wealthy. She moved to Phoenix, claiming she needed a fresh start away from the judgment of our community. Trent, meanwhile, had disappeared entirely. Frank's contacts suggested he'd left Wisconsin, probably looking for his next victim in a new city. The house felt different without Marta's presence, quieter, but also more peaceful. Adam thrived without the constant tension, his grades improving and his confidence returning. Lily visited more often, no longer walking on eggshells around her parents' deteriorating relationship. As for me, I discovered something unexpected. I liked the person I'd become. Not the vengeful part, but the stronger part. The part that refused to be a victim, that demanded respect, that fought for what mattered. I'd spent 18 years trying to be the perfect husband to an imperfect wife. Now I was free to be myself, whatever that meant. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Eddie. How are you holding up? Better than expected. Good. Listen, my sister-in-law has this friend, recently divorced, thinks you might like her. I laughed. It's a little soon for that, don't you think? Maybe. But life's short, Simon. You've got a lot of good years left. Don't waste them being alone. He was right, of course. But for now, I was content with the life I'd rebuilt from the ashes of my marriage. My children respected me, my friends supported me, and I'd learned that sometimes the nice guy doesn't have to finish last. Sometimes, if he's smart enough and angry enough, he can finish first.